Okay, people, it's been a while since we've done a hashtag Keep the Flame Alive interview. To be honest, I was getting a little bit bored with it, so I went to my go-to friend, David Rubens Sensei. Um, and here he is, David Rubens Sensei, 7th Dan in Yoshinkan Aikido. He's by far and wide one of the best storytellers in the Yoshinkan, but a storyteller with the right credentials. So he's not just a storyteller, but he's been there, done that. Now, I've got ahead of myself. I need to thank Shindokan Publications and AikiTV.online for making this possible. By the way, Darren Friend Sensei, KTFA stands for Keep the Flame Alive, not Keep the Fuck Away. All right, we got that out of the way. So, David Rubens Sensei, welcome.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
I want to start with, who was David Rubens before Japan and before Aikido?
Oh, very simply, David Rubens was a dope smoking hippie. That's simple, Joe. I'd left home when I was 17 and had adventures. I ended up in Israel. I spent 4.5 years in Israel. Had a great time.
So, sorry, hold on a second. So, home was
London. Home was London.
Yeah.
Nice Jewish kid from London. Getting into a bit of trouble. Nothing serious, but silliness. So my dad took the traditional route, sent me to Israel. To be on a kibbutz at the age when I was there, 1977. On day 2, fell in love with it and just said, man, love it. Stayed there 4.5 years. And then went traveling. I spent 6 months in Germany. And then I was in India for 2.5 years with the Dalai Lama up in Dharamsala and doing Buddhism. And got very deep into Buddhism. And I spent 3 months in a Tibetan Buddhist monastery down in South India. And I was on my way to Sri Lanka to join a monastery there. And I got caught in Oroville, which was a semi-quasi-spiritual community in Southeast India. And I spent a year there. Then I went to Goa, and I bought a field of dope, and then basically sold that on the beaches. Smoked a kilo, as one did in those days. But I met a Japanese guy, and we got talking. And then one evening on the beach, sitting there smoking, rolling up, smoking on the beach in Goa, having your pineapple banana milkshake, I saw 2 people do Aikido on the beach with Hakama, the full lot in Hakama. Hakama, the Joes, a lot on the beach. And I went, wow, look at that, man, look at that. And I said, you know what, I'd like to have a go at that. And I met a Japanese guy, Walla, and we played table tennis together. And then he went back to Japan. And then he said, if you're ever in Japan, give me a visit. And 6 weeks later, I turned up. Can you imagine his shock? He sort of left Japan to go, left India to go back to Japan. And suddenly I literally gave him a phone call and said, hey, Walla, I'm in Japan. And that was it. And I arrived on the 1st of June, I arrived on the 17th of March, 1984. And I went to look for Aikido, and I found a couple of places which were university dojos, and I just didn't like it. It was just bullying. It was just nasty. And I said, man, if that's Aikido, then forget it. And then I heard about this place 3 stations from where I was living, Musashi Koganei. And I went looking for it. And I said, what did I say? Aikido no Gakko Doko. Where is the Aikido school? Because I spoke a bit of Japanese. And they said, somewhere over there. And I heard the mats being slapped on a Sunday morning. And that was the Yoshinkan Honbu. I walked in, and Andy Walsh was there at the time. He was the first person I spoke to there. And he said, come and sit upstairs. And I went upstairs. It was a Sunday morning, that beautiful Koganei dojo, big Koganei dojo, sun coming in, the spring sun coming in, on June, in I think it was about May by that time. And everybody was sitting there in lines. I thought, this is nice. And then Takano Sensei walked in, and he went, bang! And I said, I want to do that. Whatever that man just did there, I want to do that. And that was it.
You already answered the next 2 questions. So you went to Yoshinkan, and then what, did you just train, or did you just become an Uchidashi straight off, do the course? What did you do?
No, basically, I went in as Ipan. I went on the first class, and I've said it before, and I say it again. 1st of June 1984, 6 o'clock in the evening, Jacques Pai Sensei was my first teacher. And I went home and I stood in front of the mirror for half an hour in kamae, trying to work out my kamae. Turned up the next day and just said, this is what I want to do. And I had absolutely no skill or capabilities for a Yoshinkan. I was not designed for Yoshinkan. My body wasn't, my spirit wasn't, my mind wasn't, but I just felt connected to it.
Why do you say that? Why
because there's a certain sort of person who feels comfortable in the dojo. And I did. First of all, I had fear. I had fear of pain.
Come on, we all did.
I had, and that you know was something that I had to face up to. And secondly, my body is just not very subtle. You know, my body does not move like you want an Aikido person to move. So my knees and my ankles are completely and utterly stiff. So in that sense, you know, if you look at sort of the 10, 20 people sort of who started within those 2 weeks, you would never ever have chosen me as, you know, that's the guy who's going to be doing it in 30 years' time. Never. But what I did was I very quickly realized I wanted to push forward, and I asked to become a member of the Kenshu class, which was the daytime classes, which was not Senshu Sei. It was a Kenshu Sei. Just you go in there, and it was basically brown belts only, brown belts and above. And I asked if I could join that, and the word came down, yes, you can. So suddenly I'm there during the day. So you only go there in the evening. Suddenly you're there in the daytime. You know, I've never been in the daytime before. Completely different feel. And suddenly, you know, they look at you saying, what are you doing here in the daytime? And you say, I'm here to train. There's a kitchen. And you sit there and that was the beauty about the Kokone Dojo. Every teacher trained every class. You know, it wasn't that somebody ran the class. So you got there at 10 o'clock class, and you've got Takano Sensei teaching them. You've got Sakurai Sensei. You've got Nakano Sensei, Ando Sensei, Paya Sensei waiting to train. And then there's three people training there. And
I just need to backpedal a little bit. So what drew you to Aikido? The aesthetics? Because you said you saw 2 people on the beach.
First of all, it was just physically beautiful. It was visually and physically, and in terms of just a cognizance of there is some. And don't forget, I was a searcher. You know, I'd been searching. You know, I'd been in Israel. I'd been on the kibbutz. I had spent time in Buddhist monasteries. So I was very, very open, and I've been doing a lot of meditation. You know, stuff like that. You know, I was doing 40-minute headstands, Joe. I mean, you know, this was, you know, I was doing some serious stuff.
But then, you know, then going to the Yoshinkan and seeing Takano Sensei, that's like poles apart.
It is.
So what?
But nevertheless, you're absolutely right. But if you basically, I think I live my life as a pendulum. You know, very intense in Israel. Then you go to the monastery. Then you go down to the beach. Maybe it was just time to get back in. The answer is, Joe, you know, who the hell knows? I don't know. But the truth of the matter is that connection has stayed. That, you know, that golden thread has been through my life since the 1st of June 1984. That's what's getting on for 36 years, over 36 years.
I want to tell, you know, you in the Yoshinkan when Stan Brennan called it the golden age, yes. Right? We know the characters who were involved there. Who stood out for you, and who did you rub shoulders with? I know Danny was your partner, big tall Danny. Talk about some of the teachers first, then we'll go into some of the students.
Well, of course, first of all, Shioda Sensei was there. You know, Kancho Sensei was very, very much there. Though he was coming in and out. He didn't teach all the classes, but you know, it was a Kogane dojo, and you had Kancho Sensei was there, and of course Takano Sensei. You know, Takano Sensei was he was like a flaming. I mean, you know, like an oil thing on fire. Just, you know, everything circulated around Takano Sensei. It really, really was. He was the exemplar of what the Yoshinkan dojo was in Kogane, and there was that energy there. I said, and you know, in the previous conversations we had with Rob and with Jacques Paya, I said then, I suddenly realized that actually Kogane dojo was a Kido Tai dojo which other people were allowed to come to, whereas the Uchiha dojo was a public dojo which the Kido Tai trained in, which is a different thing.
That's a good way to put it.
But you know, the Kogane dojo was a Kido Tai dojo from big start to finish. The people I liked, I tell you, somebody who, and again, you need to get to him, Joe, Alistair Thompson. I mean, a forgotten man of Yoshinkan history, but he was, he was Rob Senior, and he was the adult in the room when we were there. But the people there were Mori and Nishida, were the two Japanese kids. Basically, we were all kids then. Mori, of course, is now, Nishida dropped out. Mori's gone on to do great stuff in I think in Brisbane. And then it was Rob and Alistair Thompson and myself and Danny Mayer. We were that cohort. And there was no question. Alistair Thompson was the adult in the room. He was married. He had a job. He was a professional, and he was to a certain extent the responsible leader of the group. Sorry, yeah.
No, go on, please.
One teacher who I think has also dropped out of history, and which I had incredible respect for then and still do, is Nakano Sensei. Because Nakano Sensei, first of all, his technique was beautiful. He had the sharpness and the crispness of Takano Sensei, but he just brought it down a notch. He just brought it down a notch to allow you to live with him. But he was what we call in Yiddish, he was a mensch. He was a good bloke. In an environment where being a good bloke was not necessarily seen as a positive attribute, but I had absolute respect for the way he lived.
He was also a hard man. He was also a very hard man.
He was a hard man, and we know the stories about the broken arms and the stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yes, everybody's a hard man there. But within that, he really brought the humanity to his relationships with everybody around him, which in a way was often missing.
Let me ask you a question. When I was there in '83, I was in Kancho's classes when he was teaching the Ippon classes, and Rob said that he never saw Kancho in the evenings teaching the Ippon. Did you?
Yes, no, I did.
Because I saw a different teacher in the Kenshu and with the riot police, and in the evening same dojo, same man, two different teachers.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and he was relaxed. He was walking out, and he would laugh, and he would take people. He would take kids. He'd take kids, and he'd do some stuff, and they'd laugh. And of course, as soon as he did anything, everybody came around and watched what he was doing. No, but he taught certainly in Kogune. He taught regularly. Yeah. And I think he taught less often in Ochiai because he was just there less often, and he was slightly older. But I mean, he had this. If he walked into the class and there wasn't enough people there, he'd after 5 minutes, he'd say to Takano Sensei, you carry on, and he would go off, have his tea in his room, which he's allowed to do. But no, he was teaching, and he was teaching Shomenuchi Iko Josa Ichi, and it wasn't exactly the way it was being done, but he was, that's what he was doing, and it was a great thing.
Back then, we said Koine was Takano Sensei's dojo, yes?
Yeah.
And Chida Sensei was a different man altogether. Different style, different personalities. It was a funny mix. Was a strange mix, wasn't it?
It was, and it was almost as though Chida Sensei was going the other way in a direct, as saying, I'm not going to compete with that. That's not the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to go my path completely. I'll give you an example. One of the things we did as an Uchidashi was you folded the hakama. Now, to fold Kancho Sensei's hakama should take at least an hour and a half. You do it less than an hour and a half to fold his hakama, you're rushing it, do it again, seriously. But to fold Takano Sensei's hakama took 10, 15 minutes. But Takano Sensei's hakama was absolutely crisp and ironed, it was actually very easy to fold. Chida Sensei's hakama was just all over the place, like it was soft and it had no creases in it. You didn't know where the creases were. The belts wouldn't fold. It was just like it was just being kept in his room, And it was almost a significant indicator of the way they approached what they were doing. Not one was better or worse, but I think Chida Sensei was very, very, very much making a statement. That's not the way I do it. I do it a different way. And of course, then when Ochiai Dojo opened, Chida Sensei was then sort of dojo cho in Ochiai. But on Thursdays, they swapped. So on Thursdays, Takano Sensei would go to Ochiai, and Chida Sensei would come into Kogune. And it changed, absolutely. There's no question about it. Just the energy in the dojo changed. And I remember once, for some reason, they hadn't swapped it. So we're sitting there in the class waiting for Shioda Sensei to walk in, and Takano Sensei walks in, and you suddenly go, whoa, woof, woof, you know. And it wasn't bad. It wasn't disrespectful in any way. It was just a different sort of energy.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just your opinion on Sakurai.
No comment. No comment. I didn't get him. I didn't understand him. Didn't get him. Didn't feel connection with him. No. You know, may he live long and prosper. I have nothing against him, but I just had no connection with him at all.
Inoue Sensei.
The way a man should live. The way a man. You want to see how a man should live? That's how a man should live. A man of respect and honor and dignity and humanity and just every good word you could say. And it when I went back to Japan, I can't remember when it was, but he'd already left the Hombu dojo. And as you know, Joe, that was not a good time. It was not it was not done well. But I phoned him up and I said, Sensei, I'm here. And he was on the way to somewhere. And we met for coffee at 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning in a station. And he made time to meet me at 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning in a station, just to have that half hour to say, And you just think, you know what? He's just an outstanding man in every aspect. And I've never heard anybody say a word against Inoue Sensei. So I'm not saying anything particularly insightful.
We know the circumstances and all that. We'll leave that for maybe later. Maybe later. Yeah. After the I got to ask this, Dave, and if you don't want to answer, you don't have to answer. Okay. Yeah. You were part of the demonstration for the Emperor's grandson. Yes.
I was.
You were.
The current emperor, absolutely.
Current emperor, and there was a famous picture posted afterwards. You were not in that picture. Rob was not in that picture. Alistair wasn't. Danny wasn't. Why is that?
I also, and I need to check this but I also believe that Mori and Nishida were not either. It'd be interesting to check.
I think they were. I think I could be wrong.
But if they were. Again, before let's check because I have a feeling that they're not, but I'm not sure. It's a great pity. It was how many Western foreigners can say that they have given a martial arts demonstration in front of the Emperor of Japan? Not very. Well, actually, I think sort of myself, Danny, and Rob and Alistair are about the only ones who could. I think it was. It would have been a nice thing to have. There's no question about it. You have if you're in that picture, you put it on your wall and you take it out occasionally and show it to your grandchildren.
I'm going to follow up with why.
Joe, I have no idea. It was not my decision. It is what it is.
Okay.
You move on. It is what it is.
All right. So and I said this. We'll move on. I said this when we did the last interview with Jacques and with Rob. Officially, you were the last Uchidashi. Foreign Uchidashi. Because after you, Mark came in and Mark didn't want to take on the position. He said, just help, right? So, as the last Uchidashi or foreign Uchidashi after the Yoshinkan, was it permissible for you to then go to Iwama, or what was the idea in Dave Rubens' head to go to Iwama afterwards?
I had left. As an Uchidashi, it would have been impossible to go to Iwama. I left. So I think I left in about August, something like that, August 2008. Right, let's start again. 1988. About August 1988, I left.
88, 87?
88. 88.
I think you want to check that. I think it was 87 because you came to Melbourne the year my daughter was born.
I think you should check which year your daughter was born, Joe. I know I came straight after that, but okay, let's just check that. Had I been to Iwama before I came to you?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. No. Well, maybe I need to go back. No, because I'm pretty sure it was 88 in my mind. Okay. Because I did the course in 86 to 87, and then I was Uchidashi. So no, 88. I'm pretty sure it's 88. We'll have to go back.
Oh,
We'll have
okay,
to go back.
maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
No,
Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah. Go on. Yeah.
listen, Joe, if you say that with conviction, I'll probably believe you, but I'm pretty sure it's 88.
I'll
But
tell you why.
so I left in.
I'll tell you why, because when you came, that was the first demonstration that we did in our dojo, and it was the kickoff, and that became the first annual demonstration that we ever did.
Okay. In that case, there's a record of it.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
We'll go back to it. In my mind, it's 88, and I've been telling the stories for 30 years. Okay. So
people, this is what happens when you get old.
It really is. Okay. It really. Right. So don't believe the other stories you're hearing. But basically speaking, I knew Stan Pranin. At that stage, Stan Pranin of Aiki News. At that stage, Stan was basically living in a tiny little room, trying to put out Aiki News, and he would actually go around the dojos with a backpack trying to give away Aiki News. I've still got the full collection. I've got from the very first photocopied, stapled ones. I've still got somewhere in my garage the full collection back to #1, I think. But I wanted to do weapons. I wanted to do Joe. Actually, I didn't want to do Bokken, but I wanted to do Joe. I wanted to do 6-move Joe Cutter, and I wanted to do 31 Joe Cutter. And basically what happened was I'd already left, so I was no longer an Uchidashi. So, but I told, and I was still training in the Homu Dojo. And I said, I want to go up. And they said, yeah, fine. You're not Uchidashi, off you go. And so Stan Pranin asked Saito Sensei, there's this guy from Yoshinkan, I was third dan at the time, can I come up? And they said yes. And I went up, and I think that was the first time I ever wore a hakama, because Yoshinkan, you don't wear a hakama. So I bought a hakama to go there, didn't know how to tie it, slightly embarrassed myself. But what happened was on the very first evening, and I want to tell this if you don't mind, Joe, on the very, very first evening that I sat there, in that beautiful dojo, in that very small dojo in Iwama, everybody knows it, very, very small dojo, sort of 30 people in there, packed out. And I was told, sit with the Yudansha. So I said, okay, I'll sit with the Yudansha. And I come in, and Saito Sensei comes in, and for the first 10 minutes, he says, when I was a young man, Shioda Sensei was my senpai, and Shioda Sensei really helped me. And people say, why is he talking about Shioda Sensei? But he sat there, and he's in the front of the Iwama thing. He talked about Shioda Sensei and how Shioda Sensei, etc., etc., etc. And I reported that back to Homu Dojo, and I found it fantastic. I stayed there 2 weeks, which was the agreed thing, and I loved it. I loved it. You get up in the morning, you train in front of the jinja. The difference is completely different. You had the daidokoro, you had the kitchen where you'd eat with Saito Sensei's son, Saito Sensei's son.
Hitohiro.
It was Hitohiro. So I thought it wasn't. And then you'd all be cooking together, and it was just a family feeling. And literally, Saito Sensei came on the first evening and make sure you got enough pillows. I mean, that's how sort of it is. So then I went back and I said to Patricia Hendricks, I said, love it. Can I come back? And so basically, I went back and I spent 3 months as an Uchideshi in Iwama. And I believe I'm the only person to have been sort of an outside Uchideshi accepted in there.
Okay, so how do the differences in experiences compare? Uchideshi, Yoshinkan.
It's just you visit one uncle and you visit another uncle. Well, first of all, I mean, Yoshinkan. I was Uchideshi for 2.5 years. So that was my life. I mean, Iwama was only for 3 months, but it's a feeling. It's just a feeling of Yoshinkan. You can do many things in Yoshinkan, but relax is not one of them. If you're in the dojo, you are on. You're on all the time. Whereas in Iwama, it wasn't like that. It was very, because of course you had the farm. You had Saito Sensei, he had his wife there. So you had a life going on there. It was very, very much that you were a guest in that house. You were a guest in that house, and you better behave. And if Mrs. Saito decided you weren't behaving, you were in serious trouble. That would be bad news. But I mean, Hitohiro, I had a very good relationship with him. I mean, he took me on board, and he helped me, and he was showing me stuff, and he was just a good man as well. Really enjoyed being around him. I remember on the second evening when we finished training, and we were sitting outside again, August, September, some beautiful sort of early autumn day, and he brought out a couple of beers, and we were sitting there having a beer, sitting on the bench in our doggies. And I was thinking, you know what? I really like this. And besides that, I like Iwama style. I think it's it's really a wham bam style, which I enjoy. So I enjoyed just that wham bam training style. Yeah.
All right. So then after Japan, let's not worry about whether it was 87 or 88. Uh,
Yeah.
sorry, you also went to Yamanashi, didn't you? After the
Oh no, I went there for a visit. I went there to visit. I didn't stay there. I
okay,
went up there to see Takano Sensei, but just as a visit. No, I
okay.
didn't stay
So
there.
um, after Japan, what did Dave Rubens do?
I came to you. I sent you a letter. I wrote you a letter, and I said, "Dear Joe Sensei, I'm leaving Japan. Can I come over?" Because I wanted to travel again, and I came
Yeah.
over. And on the very, very first morning, I remember you doing a demonstration. We went out. We did a demonstration on the concrete in a school.
You
So
remember that?
I,
Was the
oh,
first time I did
I've
a
still got the
silent
bruises on a cold winter's day, Joe. I've still feel
first
the
time I
bruises.
did a silent ukemi when you were the shite, and I slapped and I thought that ain't gonna work. And yeah,
I mean, just to let everybody know, we turned up to do this demonstration. I mean, I just turned up, just turned up in Melbourne, literally out of the taxi. Um, and Joe said, "I'll do a demonstration. You fancy coming down?" So we went down to the school to do a demonstration. There was maybe 4 little silly little mats, and we looked at each other and we said, "Mate, let's." And so we did the whole demonstration on concrete. There you are, kids. That's how the old people did it.
and I was
There you
picking out gravel out of my hand afterwards.
are. I tell you.
And it was good to meet you in Melbourne. And like I said, you had an impact in that you kicked off our demonstrations, and it's been going ever since. Except for
Fantastic.
COVID this year, we had to cancel it.
Yeah.
But um, after Melbourne, what did you do?
I went to, I was invited to, well, first of all, we had in 1991, of course, we had the IYF thing in Canada, where Shioda Sensei went over, which is a big, big deal. And I met a guy called, you know what, Chris, I've forgotten his name now. Chris
Howard or Chris Johnson?
Chris,
Howard, I think.
no, it was in Indianapolis. Chris Howie.
Yeah, Chris Howard. Yeah,
In
okay.
Indianapolis. And he invited me over to go, and they wanted to, they had a dojo and a Tai Chi center, wanted to expand a bit, and they invited me over. I was a young, tough third dan, coming out of being an Uchidashi. And they invited me over. And I had a really good time. It was the first time I've been in your dojo, but you had the Japanese feel to it. Chris Howie was a student of Kishida Sensei, so there was a slightly different lineage there. But then in January, I'm pretty sure it was January the next year, 1999, I got a phone call saying, "Your dad's died, come home. He'd had cancer." And so I got the phone call on the Friday. I left on the Monday, came back to London. My dad died 10 days later, but we had those 10 days, which was very, very good. And I was asked to teach a self-defense class to some women by a police guy I knew. They really liked it and asked me to come back. And he asked his boss to come in and have a look at it. He really liked it, asked his boss to come in. And then the police guy said, "Do you want a dojo? We'll help you set up a dojo." And so we had a hut in London. We had a hut. We basically got a hut with leaky roof. And we opened up on the 16th of June, 1991. And I was there for 10 years in that hut. That's how it goes.
No. And you've been teaching ever since, right?
Up until COVID. I mean, it's strange. I've been teaching. I've been running a dojo ever since. I mean, and defined myself as an Aikido teacher. And in COVID, I stopped teaching.
When did you get your 7th dan?
A couple of years ago. I mean, I generally don't. I mean, a couple of years ago. I mean, within that sort of range, a couple of years ago, something like that. I've got to say, with Jacques Pai's help.
Yeah, look, I need to ask this question. There's a lot of people who transition from other Aikido styles or who've just come on board, and then I know I've just heard of someone who got his 7th dan, and he was Shodan in '94. Do you think that's too fast? Do you think that he didn't transition from another style? But what do you think about downgrades? Do you have to pay your dues? Do you have to do the time? What's the criteria?
The truth is, the criteria is whatever the boss wants to say it is. Someone wants to give a boss and gold and red belts, and that's their thing. The question is, do you respect that? Many years, I spent a long time doing. I was a close protection operator, And when I was a young man doing close protection, I was working for an Arab man, great guy. I thought he was quite old then, but he was actually a lot younger than I am now. But I was bitching about something, and he said, David, he said, listen, my friend, he says, I take in this world, I look after my family, my house, and my business. If you have a problem with any of those guys, tell me about it. But why are you telling me about the bastard down the road? So I don't deal with it, Joe. It's not my thing. It's not my thing. You know what? Good luck and God bless. Because, and I'll tell you why.
Let me hold on. I'm going to push you on this one. You said earlier that your reputation is all you have, and part of the reputation is being a 7th dan in Yoshinkan Aikido.
Yes.
So, and if you get other people who claim to be the same level in the same organization, doesn't that bring down your reputation and your standing?
I don't. It doesn't. Not in my mind. It might in somebody else's. I don't feel judged on that. You know. I mean, I have. We all. I remember speaking here at an All Black. You know, if you want to have a definition of excellence, it's an All Black. It's a New Zealand rugby player All Black who puts the shirt on. Yes. And I was listening to Sean. What's a great All Black captain? He was the.
I don't follow rugby, but
okay,
yes,
Sean something. And the rugby players, and he was saying, you know what? There are people who I don't think should have deserved the All Black shirt. And you go, man, they're All Blacks. I mean, how can you have people, you know, who you do not believe, you know, if you put on that shirt, you're an All Black. And within any group, there's a hierarchy. Within any group, within the SAS, there's, you know, some people say, well, I don't think he really should be in the SAS, you know, or, you know, fighter pilots, you know, I don't really should be. And you think, well, that's the most elite thing you can have. So within any elite group, you always have you have the hierarchy. You look at it from the outside and it's, you know, it's a cohesive unit. It's the Sensei say, listen, Joe, there are people who say they're Sensei, and you and me look at them and think, mate, if that's what a Sensei is, seriously. There are Hombu Dojo instructors that we look at and say, well, you know what? That's not what I thought a Hombu Dojo instructor would look like. So we're all making judgments all the time, whatever it is. I personally think you're right. I think one of the things that got wrong was the idea that you have time limits. You know, and if it says 3 years from 2nd dan to 3rd dan, on 3 years and 2 days, bang, they put the application in. But like I say, Joe, my house, my dojo, my family, I help. You know, that's what I deal with, nothing else.
Understand. Going back to that, those timelines were not meant to be the top criteria. It was meant to be the base criteria.
I know. But
for someone who's training in the Hombu dojo all the time.
Yes.
Okay, enough said. Okay.
But I went for 10 years between 3rd dan and 4th. I mean, just as a thing, when I did my 4th dan test, and Guddy won't mind me taking, you know, it's a public thing. Guddy, sure. When I did my 4th dan test, Gaddy was Shodan. He was my U.K. He got 5th dan before I did. And the reason was, and I think you'll recognize it, Joe, is I believe you should not ask for a grade. You shouldn't ask. You know, your teacher gives you a grade when you think it's ready. And so I just never asked. And it was not a big deal. Also, I think it takes time to become comfortable. You know, if you become a 3rd dan, I think it takes 4 or 5 years to work out what a 3rd dan means, you know. And if after 2 years you're waiting for 4th dan already, you're not enjoying that experience of being a 3rd dan. So it didn't worry me in any slight. It didn't worry me. But I just didn't feel that you know, asking for a dan was not the way to go about it. So there you go.
You know, Mori and I were both full-time Aikido teachers running full-time dojos, and it was 8 years between our 5th and 6th dan.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but we refused to ask. We wouldn't ask.
There you go. There you
go. Okay, so now I know you're not going to like this, but I think.
Okay, Joe, just let me know, when are you going to come on to the questions I do like? I mean, because you know, I'm looking forward to those as well.
Asking questions you like. So look, in my book, you know, whenever I travel, people always say Dave Rubens was one of the first teachers I invited out. I went to see Dave Rubens, and he put me on my path to Yoshinkan Aikido. How many countries in Europe and outside did you actively promote Yoshinkan Aikido to?
Lots where I was invited. I mean, Malta, Poland. Ukraine.
Ukraine.
There's a couple of others I can't even remember. I mean, a couple
Yeah,
of Eastern
I mean
European
those three are enough. But you know, Dave, you how do I say this? You've introduced them, and then you've said to them, "Hey, why don't you invite this teacher or this teacher?" You've put my name forward. You put Robin's name forward. You know that is very rare. That is really rare. Most teachers introduce and keep. You've just said, "Here's your introduction. Now meet this person. Meet this person." Is that the Buddhist in you, or it's not
I
the
think so.
Yoshinkan in you?
It's Yoshinkan, it's Buddhism, it's humanity. I don't know. It's I genuinely, it's the way it's the way I do stuff. I mean, it can work against you. I mean, I was basically the technical director and helped set up a country federation from pretty well from zero. Though they invited me in, and I went there sort of a couple of times a year for 3, 4, 5 years. Did their gradings, had their people come and stay in the dojo to do their gradings with us, and then they went and they joined another teacher. And I got a letter saying, I got a letter from that teacher's admin people saying, could you please write to the local teacher saying that they should rewrite their website and take your name off their website.
Really?
And I said, yeah, no, seriously, you know, that's it. And I said, listen, you want them to do that, you let them do that. But I said, once you start rewriting history, you're going down a bad path. You know, once you start rewriting history, you're going down a bad path. But Joe, there was no feeling of, it just seemed to be a good thing to do at the time, and I think it is.
That's why I'm having this interview, because I do respect you. I respect what you've done, but I have this big problem with many people who rewrite history to suit their narrative.
Agreed.
I've said, Dave, that Aikikai in Malaysia acknowledge my uncle as being the father of Aikido in Malaysia. Yoshinkan don't. Go figure.
Joe, there is no go figure. And I think maybe as you get older, you get more cynical, or it just, it ceases mattering. But you know what? Live long and prosper. That's basically, and there's very, 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 very few people I genuinely don't like. But the ones I genuinely don't like tend to be in Yoshinkan. I find there's something about it.
Can I ask you who?
No, I can, but okay. I'm not going to ask you.
And this is another thing about you. I remember we met in Japan in the 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
Or maybe sorry, was in the UK after a seminar, and I was bitching and moaning about the person who taken over the Yoshinkan.
Yeah.
And you said to me, it's not about the bad, it's about the good. So stop whining. And I took
it. It made no impression on you at all, Joe, did it?
oh, I'll wear that one. But you're right. You're right. It's about the good. It's about the good. It's not about the bad. But sometimes I like to highlight the good by pointing out the bad.
Okay, Joe. Ask me. In that case, I'll feed you. Ask me a question. What has Yoshinkan done to your life? Ask me that question.
Okay, Dave Rubens, what has Yoshinkan done to your life?
Good question, Joe. I'm glad you asked that. And I think it's true. And I think it's what we think about what Yoshinkan is, and it's made my life better. It's made my life better on every single level. I genuinely thought I was going to have a life through Buddhism, and I've had a life through Yoshinkan. And for me, that has not been a life wasted. A life dedicated. I think Yoshinkan is a door. It is a path, as valid as any other true path. And it's given me an amazing thing. It's given me a family. It's given me community. But I tell you, the most valuable thing it's given me. And somebody asked me this a few years ago. When my kids were slightly younger now, so now my kids are in their 20s, except my youngest. But when they were traveling, they were getting to 18, 19, 20 years old. They went traveling, went to festivals. And before they left, I said to them, listen, guys, if you ever get into trouble anywhere in the world, go to an Aikido dojo and say, my dad's David Rubens, and they will look after you. And that's a pretty damn powerful thing, Joe. That's a pretty damn powerful thing.
Yeah.
And we've had people turn up in London, travelers, usually from Eastern Europe because they've got no money. but they've turned up and they've been mugged, or they've been lost, or they missed their plane. And what do? They looked they went onto the website and they found a Yoshinkan Aikido dojo, and they turned up and they said, and you say, right, fine, you're in the Arab world, in the Muslim world, you have this concept of ummah, which is a community, you know. And I think that we have an ummah. I think you know, being part of Yoshinkan and being part of the Aikido community, that's what's brought me value. It's
So
brought me value.
why are the people you hate in the Yoshinkan?
Why do I hate them? Because they're abusive.
Why are the few people that you hate in your life, why are they Yoshinkan people?
Because you know, it's family, isn't it? Those, you know, other people, I don't care about them. You know, it's your family. But the reason I hate them is because, in my opinion, they are abusive. They're abusive. They're psychologically abusive and they're physically abusive. And there is something about that just you know, I see absolutely there is nothing within the dojo that gives somebody a right to be abusive. There's nothing within that contract that gives you the right to be abusive.
Okay. I wasn't going to ask this question, but I'm going to hit you with this, right?
Sure.
A lot is said about the student-teacher relationship in Budo, especially in traditional Budo, right? And I will quote one David Rubens here. I'm in my 50s and I'm too old to have a disapproving father figure. Here's the question. Can the student-teacher relationship go for too long and be abused or overly complicated?
It can't go for too long. I mean, you know, we're talking about Takano Sensei here. I mean, quite openly.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
I'll say that. I'll say that. I'm happy to say that, because I have, on one level, I have absolute respect for Takano Sensei, and he created the person I am. And listen, I spent 5 years with him every single day, and every single day you challenged yourself to get on the mats with him. But 30 years later, I don't want that relationship with him. I want him to say, hey, tough times back then. I don't want to go in and to be, you know, and my kamae may not be particularly good, but I don't want to have that relationship. That's not what I need. And I don't think it's healthy either. By the way, when I was speaking, Joe, let's make it clear. When I was talking about being abusive, I was not talking about Takano Sensei.
Okay, yeah. I understand that. And let's be clear on that. That's not what he meant. But by having said that you don't want that relationship anymore, means it's still there. It's still lingering.
Oh man, it's lingering.
And I'm not just talking about Takano Sensei. I'm talking about Budo teachers in general, and how, you know, when are we going to grow up?
That's a good question, Joe. It's a good question because, of course, I'll go back to a conversation that we had in Australia, which I remember, I've mentioned it before, very, very clearly. And we were talking one night, and we were saying, you know, we were both in our mid-30s. You know, I was probably third down, something like that. You're probably a bit seen in that. But we were in our mid-30s. We were running dojos. We had responsibilities, and we were saying, what does it mean to be a Western teacher of a Japanese art? We're not Japanese teachers, but we're not coaches. We're not basketball coaches either. And you know, we have to find our way, you know, in our mid-30s, of what it means to be a Yoshinkan teacher, and to find the root or the foundation of that. I think both of us, and people like Rob and Jacques and others, and the next generation who are coming up, who I admire very much for what they're doing, I think we've found that way. So we have then got to ask ourselves about our relationship with our students as well. Because don't forget, John, we are both 20 years older than Takano Sensei was when we met him, you know. So he was a young man, you know. We are much older now, much more experienced now than he was then, and he had such an influence on our lives. But I think, yes, I think that if I look at, for example, the relationship that students have with Saito Sensei when he was alive, God bless him, I don't think they had that relationship that we had with Takano Sensei. Now, I also know that Saito Sensei was really upset, absolutely pissed off. If he turned up in somebody's dojo and they'd been in Iwama for a week, and then on the dojo, there was a picture of them with Saito Sensei. And he says, you can't use me to get, you know, you were there for a week, you were a visitor. Don't take that photo down. So he was very, very strict about where that relationship was and the boundaries of that relationship. He certainly didn't overstep it. But it was just a different format. It was a different paradigm for how you create it. And the Yoshinkan is what the Yoshinkan is. That is part of it. The Us and the Shinkoku and all that sort of stuff. That was part of the package. I don't think you could have, if you take that out, then it would not be this Yoshinkan as we know it.
Okay. I spoke to Rob Mustard this morning, and he'd like to know your take on how or why the Yoshinkan went from the second largest international Aikido organization to what it is now. This is his question, not mine.
I remember talking with Rob, and I'm pretty sure you must have been in that conversation back in the 90s when sort of there was some changes going on, and about what the relationship Hombu Dojo was. And I wrote a long letter to Hombu, and I said, the world wants a good, strong Hombu Dojo. Yoshinkan Aikido wants a strong, powerful Hombu Dojo. But I think it lost its way. Honestly, I think it lost its way. And one of the signs was, again, you talk about Eastern Europe. I was going in and out of Eastern Europe very early, so probably 1994, 1995, when it was really opening up, and very, very poor. I was with Andrei Brezhny in Kiev.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was cooking. I slept in his bed. He rented one room from an old lady. And I was there for 2 weeks, and I slept on his bed, and he slept on the floor. And he cooked rice with gravel in it, and that was what we ate. And and neither of us could afford to go to a restaurant. We actually ate that every day for 3 weeks because neither of us could afford it. And yet, what Hombu Dojo wanted was these dojos to send money to Japan. And I wrote to Hombu Dojo, and I said, I think there should be a plan that if you run a dojo and you keep it going, and you get 20 students, or you go for 1 year, then Hombu Dojo, somebody in Hombu Dojo Japan should sponsor and support that dojo and send $100 a month. $100 a month in Japan is nothing, but over there it is massive. When I was there in 1995, I met a full colonel, 25-year veteran colonel in the Russian army. His pension was $21 a month, which didn't get paid because the government had no money. But that just shows you the level of
what was the reply? What was the reply?
No reply. No, nobody mentioned. No reply. No response.
But
what Yoshinkan should have done was they should have supported the global community, whereas what they saw was the global community as an opportunity to bring money into Hombu Dojo.
In my time, I made similar requests, similar plans to help third world countries. Like you said, no reply. But going on, that's one thing. Why did it shrivel?
I don't think it has, Joe. I think it has in some places. But if you look in Eastern Europe, I mean, what they're doing in Eastern Europe, those dojos, they're doing fantastic stuff.
It has, since 2007, it's splintered. And that's what Rob's talking about. He wants to know your take on that.
It is, but anybody who understands Japanese culture would expect that to happen. It happens in every, it happens when the old man dies. You spend a year paying respects to each other, and after that you start battling for the crown, or you start splitting off. And the thing about Japan is, once you split, you're gone. It's very difficult. You don't have that ongoing maturing relationship where you build your relationship over 30 years in a different way. What happens is you're out. That's it.
Okay, Rob, there you go. Some swift David Rubens Taisabaki there.
Listen, when you're facing Rob, Taisabaki is a good way to move, let me tell you.
Okay. I got, you've tried, and not just tried, but you've promoted Yoshinkan Aikido to many countries, right? Why do you think, aside from what you said, we're going to the technicalities now, why do you think it's harder to promote and grow Yoshinkan Aikido than it is some of the looser styles? Or is my question flawed?
No, I don't think so. I think it is. I think it's a good. These are questions we have to deal with. We have to deal with the reality as is, rather than the reality we should be. I have a very good friend here, Gavin Mulholland, who's the 7th Dan Goju Ryu instructor, very, very good fighter, good karate man, good teacher. But when I had my full-time dojo, and it goes back to what we say, I used to invite other people. A lot of people used to use my dojo to teach their stuff. And Gavin actually came and trained with me for about a year. I mean, he was the third dan Goju instructor then. But he came down and spent a year training us in the dojo. And I had this conversation with him quite recently because he's got a fantastic dojo. They have camps. They've got, they have camps with hundreds of people. They have 40, 50 people in a class. I've never had more than, I think my biggest class ever was 14 people, in 35 years. And he just said, David, what you don't understand is how damn tough Yoshinkan Aikido is. You probably don't realize it. But he said, I came from Goju. And I really had to psych myself up for your classes. He said, these are tough classes. He says, Yoshinkan is not for everybody.
Dave, can I put something to you? Now, I have this on rumor, okay? That Stan Brennan, when he first went to Japan, went to the Yoshinkan. He was put in front of the mirror like we all were. He'd done Aikido before. He was put in front of the mirror and he thought, bugger this, and went off to Iwama and took off. In Iwama, he was, and things took off. And that's why Saito Sensei got so much exposure on Aikido Journal. That difference in introducing people into Aikido, that difference into introducing people who've already done Aikido, is that our flaw? You put them in front of the mirror.
It's not. It's Yoshinkan Aikido. It's like saying, okay, China, Indian food, Chinese food, it's got chilies in. Is that a flaw? No, that's Chinese food. That's Mexican. That's what it is. It is. Yoshinkan is a package. It is a cohesive package. It is what it is. I think what's happened is it's lost that cohesiveness. It's lost that integrity. We once had a very brief conversation. I made a comment and I said, what's really interesting if you look at Aikido, and by the way, Joe, it's now 9:30 in the morning, and in your honor, my friend.
Cheers.
Cheers, brother.
Thank you.
Cheers. Okay.
Good beer too, Corona, yeah.
Good beer. What I asked was, do we believe that Aikido in general, and Yoshinkan in particular, is a progressive or a regressive art? So are we progressing our understanding of it? Are we moving forward? Are we developing ideas? Are we exploring it? Or are we moving backwards, and are we losing the integrity and the centrality of what we do in the foundations, the Kihon? And at different times, I think some people, I think yourself, for example, Jacques and Rob, it's very interesting because when I think about who the people who are progressive and are adding, who are adding something in this generation we did not have in previous generations, it's you and Jacques and Rob that I think of. I don't think of the Japanese teachers, maybe Ando Sensei, but nobody else. Or is it regressive? Have we lost that, Kihon, Kamai Kihon?
Can I throw this at you? This is an extension of that question, right? In your certificate, in mine, whatever, it does not say you have a Sandan, a Yondan, or whatever in Yoshinkan Aikido. It says Sandan Aikido. And then it's signed by Shioda Gozo, Yoshinkan Kancho, Aikido Yoshinkan Kancho. But it never says we have a Yoshinkan Aikido downgrade. It says an Aikido downgrade.
I need to, you know what? I've got them in the garage somewhere. I'll have to go down.
Have a look. I've got
look
mine.
at the box
I
somewhere.
can move the camera now. But it does say that. It doesn't say we've got a Yoshinkan Aikido downgrade. It says we have an Aikido downgrade. So are we teaching Yoshinkan Aikido? Are we teaching Aikido? Are we qualified? And my question is the Yoshinkan system of teaching or the Yoshinkan Hombu Dojo, which you and I know was like a university. We've left that university. Should we repackage it? Should we remodel it? Are we trying to teach people perfect Kihon from the start? They get bored and they leave.
Again, we had this conversation, in the previous interview. I went back. Last time I went back to Hombu, I can't remember what it was. I think maybe it was 2005. I don't remember. But, I walked into Hombu Dojo, and there were people still doing, Hiriki no Ishi, Hiriki no Nida. But that's all they were doing. They've been people 30 years. And it's like, you want to play the guitar, okay, and you play classical guitar. but you want to play a bit of jazz, bit of rumba, bit of rock and roll, bit of skiffle. You know, it's a guitar. Explore it, enjoy it. And I don't think that. And again, it's not good or bad, Joe. It's that is what it is. But I don't think.
Dave. It is bad because people who playing the notes and have no idea about the music are pontificating on people who are playing the music based on the notes.
Just play the music. Okay, but my feeling is, I mean, Robert says this, and I agree. To be honest, if you want to learn good Aikido, you go to you or you go to Rob. Seriously. Now, on the other hand, if you want to see what Japan is like, Aikido is like in Japan, and we've had this conversation, it is there. But my feeling is that if you spend 2 years training at your dojo in Melbourne or Rob's dojo, or you spend 2 years in Hombu dojo, I personally think you probably come out with better Aikido from your. That's not bad. That is not bad. That is a new generation. Like you said, Joe, we're 30 years on. Because if that is not true, then it is saying you only have to come to Hombu dojo and you talk about Japanese, which is a bad thing to say. So the fact that I'm saying that is not a negative thing. It is a positive thing that people like you and Jacques and Robert
I believe like, there has to be courses for horses, and some horses do better in different courses. So some people, my students would, after training with me, might go to Japan and flourish because it's a different environment. Other people might come here and flourish. So I don't know.
I mean, the thing about it is, from when I came back, because the thing about it is, going back to what a sensei is, people want to be like their sensei. Everybody thinks their sensei is good. Everybody, we think the sensei is rubbish, but their students don't think they're rubbish. One of the things I'm very, very proud about is that when I came back and I started teaching Yoshinkan dojo in my heart, in the first 5 years, we had 7 people go and complete the Sensei Seiken. 7 people. That was more than any other country. Now, and they flourished there. People like Estella, for example. And they flourished there. And they had just come out of basic standard Meidokan training. And they were able to deal with it in Tokyo and basically thrive and do well for themselves. So that was something that I was very proud about. That they had seen something there which they wanted to do, but also I prepared them to do so. The fact that I'm saying this about that is where the centers of excellence are. After 30 years, one would hope so, because if after 30 years you can't say that, then one has to question, what value is within that as well. So I'm not saying that as a negative thing, but I'm saying as a celebration of the people who have brought their own personality to a progressive art.
Now, I'm going to take a slight detour here. Have you met David Sensei?
I believe that I met him once. He came to Hombu Dojo, and he came in and he didn't train him. He just came in and spoke to Kancho Sensei or something, and I said hello to him. But when I think it was, again, Joe, tough stuff on the memories. We're going back 25 years now. But I think when his daughter came to London, we looked after her. So that was my connection. And as soon as you say David Lynch, I think One Tree Hill. That's the connection with him in New Zealand. Yeah. But no, I didn't meet him.
That was my little insight into promoting the Pioneer series that I've done. And David Leach Sensei is the first on the Pioneer series, and he has some really, really interesting things to say. He's trained under Shioda Gozo Sensei, Koichi Tohei Sensei, Ueshiba Kishimaru Sensei, Shimizu Sensei, and he's the goods. He is the goods.
Because he was
really highly of him. Really
he was somebody who was very, he was eclectic at a time when it was not accepted to be eclectic. But that was his, and I remember, and again, now that you mention it, Joe, I recall conversations. I can't remember if we talked about it. Maybe I think we had a phone call. I think we had a long phone call once. But he was saying that he really wanted to do Aikido. He wanted to pick and choose and eat and play, and that's what he did.
And he said some interesting things about trying to amalgamate or mix or not. I'll leave it to you. Watch it. It's on aikitv.online. Now, we talked about Dave Rubens. We're going to wind up. And I want to talk about who Dave Rubens is today and what the hell is that thing behind you?
What I am is, Joe, I've had basically I got involved with security and risk management when I came back to the UK. And I rode that thing, security and risk management. I did my master's degree in security and risk management. I set up a consultancy. Then I did my doctorate, so I've got a PhD in this stuff. With strategic management and decision making in a hyper complex crisis environment. So my area of speciality is hyper complexity and crisis. And here we have COVID. And I have a consultancy which I basically work with organizations all over the world. And I set up the Institute of Strategic Risk Management, which is basically trying to create a platform, again, very much an Aikido term, trying to create a platform where academics, practitioners, and policymakers can come together and discuss issues around complex crisis issues from an academic perspective, what that can bring. We set that up in the end of 2018. We went live on the 10th of March 2019, a year and a half ago. And now we have 16 international chapters, and we run seminars and conferences. We work with organizations all over the world. We're working with the International Committee of the Red Cross, the World Bank, Institute of Disaster and Risk Reduction. So basically, I've created a space for myself looking at hypercomplexity and crisis events. But very, very much everything that you've spoken about Aikido has been brought into that, being collaborative, being open, being supportive, all of those sorts of things is very, very much how I've managed that side of my life as well.
Now, here's the devil advocate in me. We attribute things to our learning and to Aikido, and we pay homage to what Aikido has built in us. Are we arguing after the fact? Like, would we be who we were anyway if it wasn't for Aikido?
I think to a large extent, yes. I mean, I don't think Aikido can change you. It can adapt what you've got, the material you have. I mean, for example, as you know, there's this big conversation about, does Aikido work in a fight, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it does if you're a fighter. If you're a fighter and you do Aikido, then you can use Aikido in a fight. If you're not a fighter, then it doesn't. So basically, it doesn't turn you into a fighter, in my opinion. So I think that the Greeks would tell you that character is destiny. There's something underlying fundamental within you, and that is going to be how you live your life. And if you are open and collaborative, and for example, one of the things that I like in my dojo is that we have, because we're in London, we have a lot of visitors coming through, and they come in and they train us. And what I like is that they always say, "Man, I really like training with you people. Not that you're hard or you're tough, but I like training with you." And I think that Aikido training should be open and collaborative and joyful. And sometimes I've gone and trained with people, and as soon as you do come on with them, this is going to be a tough one. And as soon as you touch them, they block you, and and it's just not much fun. I want Aikido to be absolutely joyful on the mats and open and all of those sorts of things. So to a certain extent, that's exactly how I do. I do the institute and my consultancy. People, I go to have meetings with people, and people say, "You know what? We're looking forward to doing business with you." That's a good thing to say. Just like I'm looking forward to training with you.
All right, we're going to wrap this up now. I'm going to throw a quote at you and see what you have to say.
Go on.
Okay. Aikido has only two things to teach you: when to move and when to stand still. Agree, disagree? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, but that includes the whole of the universe. That includes the whole of the universe within that. I'll throw one back at you from my Buddhist days. And I used to know this in Tibetan. I don't know in Tibetan. There's only three things: that which is not, that which cannot be.
All right. I'll think about that. Can you answer my question?
I think on one level it's truth, because you have, but on another level, stillness is death. There's stillness, but there's not. Being still is not the same as being static. Stillness is very important. I mean, in training, when you're people always think of Hajime training. Hajime training was the easy bit. The hard bit was, standing there and holding it for 20 minutes. That was the hard bit. Hajime was
sitting in Seiza.
Sitting in Seiza.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sitting in Seiza, which of course is incredibly unhealthy. So I think that stillness is very important because to reflect and to breathe.
It's not talking about stillness. It's like when to move and when to stand still.
Joe, I'll say us. That's my answer to you. Us. Yes,
You didn't ask me who said that.
Who was it who said that?
One Shioda Gozo.
Well, there you go. In that case, it's right. As far as I'm concerned, if he said it, it is right. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, Dave, before I wind up, you have the last word. Anything you want to say? Anything you want to add?
What I would add, Joe, and I'm sure you believe it, is Jesus Christ, where did 35 years go? I mean, seriously, man, seriously, 35. I mean, where the hell did that time go? I mean, that's just ridiculous. So what I'd say to people who are listening to this and who are training is go out and have a really good session, my friends. Have a good session. Because the one thing I regret, the only thing I regret is I can't do those wham, bam, come off the mat, soaking wet, go, and you've gone for it. My body won't take it anymore. So go out and have a damn good training session. And Joe, I remember, I'll come back to you. And somebody asked you at one of the sessions in Nottingham, I think, can you describe Aikido in 5 words? And you got a bit upset. And I said, no. And I said, pay your damn dojo fees. That's it.
I remember that. Yes.
So basically, for the last word, if I'm talking to you out there in the world, it is really, really, really enjoy your training, enjoy your dojo, support your sensei, because it adds something to your life.
Awesome. Thank you, David Rubens Sensei. It was a
Thank
pleasure.
You very much.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
It was the injection I needed.
Good. Thank you, Joe.
Everyone, my next interview is with John Core. He wrote 8 Times Up, a book that was meant for kids, but as Mustard Sensei says, best book he ever read. So we'll interview John Core next, but also please, aikitv.online. I've got a secret. You can subscribe for free for a week or 2. Listen to David Lynch Sensei, then unsubscribe. Not meant to say that, but there you go. Once again, David Rubens Sensei, my good friend, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, Joe. Been a pleasure.
Thank you.